The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 begins with Ellie staying in the hospital for a long time, with the explanation being related to her mental and physical condition. An extremely painful occurrence occurred at the end of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, when Abby killed Joel. This resulted from Joel's murder of the Fireflies at the end of The Last of Us Season 1, which set up Abby's retaliation and the subsequent deadly cycle when Ellie and Dina depart for Seattle. The trip to Seattle and the search for the wolves, or WLF, were covered in detail in the second half of The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3. Ellie's rehabilitation was the primary focus of The Last of Us Season 2. The show also featured the Seraphites and hinted at a far larger struggle between factions of the destroyed world. After the horrific events of Episode 2, Ellie spent much of Season 2, Episode 3 at Jackson's hospital, raising the question of why she had to receive such prolonged care. Ellie had to stay in the hospital for 3 months due to her injuries during Joel's death in The Last of Us. The first and most evident explanation for Ellie's 3-month hospital stay was the physical harm she received during Joel's passing. The character of Manny attacked Ellie after being arrested and threatening to murder Abby and her friends. Ellie was seen crawling close to Joel's body and waiting for Jesse to save her after he gave her a severe kick to the stomach. This kick appeared to seriously hurt Ellie, even if it was not immediately apparent in The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2. Ellie's ribs and possibly other bones above her stomach were probably broken by Manny's kick. In addition, she probably had damage to some of her vital organs. Ellie had to recuperate for 3 months as a result. It would undoubtedly take this long for these wounds to fully heal, which would be an intriguing departure from The Last of Us Part 2. A day after Joel's passing, Tommy departs for Seattle in the original tale, followed closely by Dina and Ellie. 3 months went by in the show as Tommy rebuilt Jackson, and Ellie recovered from her injuries, with the former still in the throes of recovery. Ellie was also likely kept in her hospital for her trauma from losing Joel. More than simply her surface-level injuries, though, Ellie's hospital stay was aimed to mend her inner trauma too. The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 illustrates this when Ellie initially awakens in the hospital. Ellie's PTSD levels after seeing such a horrific event are demonstrated as she starts to scream and cry as she imagines Abby driving the shattered golf club into Joel's neck. Ellie's grief at Joel's passing is obviously far more profound, which explains why she could have needed to remain in the hospital after her physical injuries subsided and speak with another character. Gail, Jackson's therapist, is the figure in question. Ellie's emotional anguish from the ordeal with Abby and Joel was demonstrated when she was told she needed to talk to Gail before she could leave the hospital. However, it is evident that Ellie does not believe that therapy is. As a result, she primarily lies to Gail about her mental health, and Tommy eventually learns this from Gail. Why Ellie's long recovery makes sense for The Last of Us Season 2. As previously mentioned, the video game that serves as the basis for The Last of Us undergoes significant modifications in Episode 3 of Season 2. Only a day after Joel's death, Tommy in the game abandons Jackson in a furious attempt at vengeance, followed by Ellie and Dina. Though not included in the original game, the timeline shift allows the characters of The Last of Us Season 2 considerably more time to recover from Joel's murder, as well as the major infected attack upon Jackson. The Last of Us Season 2. Episode 3 skillfully illustrates how the significant events of Episode 2 are difficult to forget, even after 3 months have passed. The time jump in Episode 3 demonstrated how much effort was required to even begin to restore Jackson to its former state, as the town was nearly destroyed. This was all set against the backdrop of Ellie's recuperation. From Ellie's perspective specifically, the time leap demonstrates how severely she has been damaged by Abby's actions. It would have been simple to dismiss Ellie's impatience as blind anger if only a day had gone by. However, this blind anger is transformed into a far deeper, slowly developing urge for vengeance with the 3-month jump in The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 3, which will threaten to engulf Ellie regardless of how away Joel's death is. Despite being a game changer, the time skip makes sense overall as a means of emphasizing the show's central subject.